Graffiti, punks, gangs and mosaics. Yeah, I thought I'd talk about this job. Funnily enough, it's going to be a very big contrast to everything you've seen up to now, because I've been sitting here looking at all these amazing speakers with their amazing mosaics and how carefully planned and executed they are. And this is not planned or executed, well, not particularly, this is more the crazy end of making mosaics. So just to go back a few steps to tell you how I ended up in the barrios of Bogota on the back of a motorbike, dodging all sorts of strange things. So it kind of basically goes back to, in fact, it goes back to the BAMM forum a few years ago. Some of you may remember Isadora from Chile coming to invite people to go to Chile to make a mosaic. And a whole bunch of us went. I put my hand up, and a whole bunch of other people descended on Santiago and covered their town hall in mosaic and then ran away quick before the mayor realised what we'd done. So kind of the sort of the connection started way back then. One of the people on the Chile project was organising a biennale in Cali in Colombia, which is basically a street art biennale. And it's been going a couple of years, and up until this point had mainly consisted of graffiti artists. So they decided to get some mosaic makers along to the Cali festival. So basically this was a week where all these guys, you can see actually there's mosaicism there, some of you might recognise from last year, descend on the city of Cali in Colombia and paint amazing murals and graffiti works all around the town. It happens every other year. And this particular year, which was it 2014, was on the theme of reconciliation. As you know, they've just recently, in the last week, signed the peace deal after some 50 years of war, which is an incredibly complicated war because it started off with kind of left-wing guerrillas and right-wing US-backed government, and then as the US-backed forces pushed the guerrillas out to the peripheries, they became in conflict with the various drug organised cartels working out on the peripheries of Colombia, and then eventually they actually took over some of the drug trafficking, so some of the left-wing guerrillas became drug traffickers themselves, and the government and America sponsored this sort of independent army, separate from not a government-controlled army, a kind of independent military force that then, after they went out into the bush, then they took over the drug trafficking, and they became involved in that side. So you got this weird sort of left-wing guerrillas, right-wing paramilitaries, ex-left-wing guerrillas who turned drug cartel, the original drug cartels, the right-wing paramilitaries who become drug cartels, and the government and American special forces all fighting each other. Almost as complicated as Syria. Anyway, so peace and reconciliation was the theme. And really some amazing graffiti work going on. Mostly from the rest of South America, but also from around the world. And graffiti artists, I'm like totally in awe of graffiti artists, because having painted, originally I come from a mural painting background, where I approached murals like I approach mosaics now. It's all very carefully planned and, you know, worked out, drawn out, take my time painting it, you know, like a thing the size of that might take me 2 months to paint. These guys come along and do it in a week with a cherry picker and some spray paint. It's incredible how fast they work. So yeah, we met all these lively graffiti people. But as I say, this is the first year they had mosaic people there. There's the Mosaic, I can never quite remember how to say their title properly. Mosaicism guys at work who spoke here last year. Obviously, because we were making mosaics, we couldn't work, or it was decided that we wouldn't be working direct on the sites like most of the graffiti artists. So we had like a little market set up in the town square where we each had a tent, Coca-Cola tent, and basically we only had a week to work, so made sort of 8 foot by 4 foot panels in a week. Yeah, mosaic artists from Chile, Brazil, yeah, Germany, Italy. So it's quite good to see all these guys working, all with very, very different styles. And also quite a strong element of reaching out to the community, both the communities in the sort of the, can't call them suburbs, kind of barrios, but as I found out now, nothing like the barrios in Bogota. Working with reaching out to those people, doing some lectures out, and also getting people to come to the sort of marketplace we'd set up to look at the mosaics and talk about them. And this is the work I did. Really hard tiles they have, like so hard to cut with nippers. They're really strong, sort of glazed porcelain. And this is the bit I did. There's verdad, which is the truth, and the idea was that truth comes before reconciliation, and that's kind of like shining a light down on the past history. So basically, that was Carly. I put this thing of fruit to remind myself to tell you that. So I went to this lovely town. Now Cali is like tropical Colombia, you know, everyone, literally people dance in the street, even policemen dancing, and soldiers dancing, and all salsa music from every corner, people dancing salsa, and these amazing fruits that you never even seen half of them before, didn't know what their names were. They all taste incredible. So I came away from Colombia thinking, wow, I'm going to learn to salsa, and you know, I was straight in salsa classes the next week when I got back, and yeah, quite into the sort of tropical lifestyle. But while I was there, I met up with these guys. This is Ink Crew, who are they look the part, don't they? That's them down the bottom there. They're a graffiti team from Bogota, but they're that's some of their work, that's them working in Cali at the top there. They're not just a graffiti crew. I don't know how they get a lot of sponsorship from the local government and the city and the odd business here and there. But amongst them, as well as the graffiti artists, they've got like an education person, they've got an architect, they've got sort of a community resources person, they've got a professional filmmaker, they've got all these other people to do it. So they're a real like collective that specialise in interventions in the sort of poorer areas. So And I think because we had quite a good session tasting brandy and tequila, that they, when I got back, they contacted me and said, hey, you know, you've got to come out to Bogota because we want to make a... Because the other thing was there's this whole interaction going on between the graffiti artists and the mosaic makers about, wow, you know, they couldn't believe we spent so long just to do that much work when they'd done a whole side of a building in the same time, and they were sitting around drinking tequila while we were still slaving away, grouting and stuff. But they wanted to do it, but something must have clicked in them because they wanted to make a mosaic. So they asked me to come out and make a mosaic. No money in this. This is all kind of just for the crazy fun of it. So obviously I said, yeah. And I packed my, packed me shorts and t-shirt and polished off me salsa skills and headed to Bogota, only to go straight to the Bogota Punk Fest. As soon as I got, literally, it took me off the plane straight to the Punk Fest. We got arrested straight away just because they looked so undesirable. We were like hands up against the wall and frisked and all that, and I just talked lots of English to them, and the police were a bit confused. So I knew I should have got an inkling then that this is a different kind of Colombia than Cali was, and it was punk music all the way through. I didn't hear any salsa, so my dance, all that a whole year of practicing salsa was out the window. Pogo, which I knew had to do pogo anyway. I needn't have bothered. So yeah, punk. So right at the beginning, we took a trip up to the barrio where we're going to be working. So basically, the picture on the left there, you can see the main, up in the top, you can see the main centre of Bogota, which is the big tall buildings, the sort of posh bit, and the mountains which kind of stop Bogota. And then this big sprawling kind of barrios which surround the city. And the one you can see there looking down on is the what's called Ciudad Bolivar, which is a very sort of poor area where sort of poor Bogota people live. But then we've got, because you're looking down, the area we're going to be working is called Paraíso, was on top of the mountain. And basically it's like homemade, people built their own houses going up, slowly spreading up the mountain. And basically the population of these areas are mainly displaced people, because Colombia is the second biggest population of displaced through war people, about 6 million people, a lot of indigenous peoples from the jungles and stuff. As the war sort of spread to the peripheries of Colombia and into the jungle areas and the more difficult to reach areas, the indigenous people of those areas are pushed out and end up in Bogota, the main city. So this area is mostly a lot of indigenous people, and is even poorer than the Ciudad Bolivar at the bottom there. So this is where we're going to be working. And my first shock, because I thought that when they saw me working in Cali and doing an 8-foot by 4-foot panel in a week or 2 weeks, whatever it was, that they would get an idea that mosaic was a fast process. But of course, being graffiti artists, their mosaic wasn't a fast process, but being graffiti artists, they are fast. And so they presented us with this wall. We want to mosaic this, and it's like 100 square meters, and they want to do it in a couple of weeks. So I went into complete panic at this point. And then they said, no, don't worry, we've got all the tiles. Don't worry, we've got all the tiles. Come and see. And they took me to this converted garage owned by an avocado farmer. So it's half full of avocados and half full of crates of tiles. They said, look, we've got all the mosaic material we need, all sorted. It was all white. There wasn't any colour tiles at all. They were white and kind of beige. And I said, okay. And then they showed the design, and it was all colour. I said, well, this is all colour. What are we going to do? And it turns out they only had enough money for about a third. They didn't even know how much tile they would need. And when I worked it out, they only had enough money for about a third of the area to go out and buy colour tile. Because the white stuff was donated, obviously. So we had to scour all the local tile shops looking for colour porcelain, which was quite difficult. We ended up going to dozens and dozens of shops on the back of the motorbike, because Bogota's got the most awful traffic. Basically, when the rush hour starts, all the traffic stops and pumps loads of carbon monoxide into the air till the end of the day, and then it all goes away again. But nothing moves, so the only way to get around was on the back of a motorbike, which was fun because the roads are all full of potholes as well. So anyway, so we got managed. These are the designs. Some of the guys had done designs already. I hadn't done any designs because I didn't have a clue what was going on, basically. In terms of, that they would doing workshops with the local community and the local indigenous people, the displaced indigenous people. So I'm going through trying to sort out the tiles and looking at their designs and thinking, how can we make these colourful designs with only white tiles and not enough? So eventually we got. This is the selection of tiles we ended up with. They're all big format tiles. So at this point, that they had planned on making, because they knew that I worked on paper, they wanted to make the whole thing on paper in this avocado garage. But it was pretty obvious that there was no way we could make that 100 square metres of mosaic in the garage and then still have time at the end to fix it. And I was really worried that we would make most of the mosaic and then I would leave and they would be left to, how the hell are we going to fix this? So then I had to persuade them that we've got to do this direct on the wall. It's the only way it's going to happen. So we decided to work direct, but first we wanted to pre-cut all these massive big tiles to try and speed things along. We had a sort of slave labour kind of cutting in the garage. That's the garage. While they were all chopping, they gave me a lesson on how to do proper spray painting, which was good fun. And yeah, they just cut and cut and cut and cut until all the tiles were cut into, kind of this size tesserae kind of thing. The idea being that would speed the work along and we'd be able to work much faster and have half a chance of completing the job. So then we went up to the site and they worked so fast. They had the whole thing drawn up in like an afternoon, just with spray cans and without hardly, no gridding up and all that stuff. They just went for it and did it. So this is Cops, one of the graffiti artists, drawing. They're so skilled with spray cans. It's incredible what they can do with just one can. So, yeah. So going up to draw it on the wall, then realised, because we're going on public transport, because it's so far, that we have to get a bus from the centre of Bogota to the end of the line terminus, and then another bus to Ciudad Bolivar, and then a bus from there that goes up the mountain like this. And it was taking us like 3 hours, 2.5, 3 hours to get to the site. So then I said, look, we can't do this either. We've got to stay here on site, which they were totally was a bit panicky about, because actually Paraíso is also quite famous for, during the height of the Troubles, the government gave rewards, like headhunting rewards, to the army and paramilitary for how many rebels they caught. And rather than go to the effort of going out into the bush, into the mountains, and finding rebels and capturing them, they used to drive lorries to Paraíso, get all the young guys, drive them down the road, shoot them all, put them in army uniforms, and go and collect the reward. And there's actually quite a nice, there's a good film they made about that period. Yeah, so Paraíso. So we decided we would have to rent somewhere in the barrio. So this is the place we rented, which is actually very nice inside, although a bit cramped. It was free to a bed, although I being the privileged foreigner, I had a bed all to myself, which was good. So we stayed in this kind of place, and we lived there for the 3 weeks we were working, and ate there and everything. It was amazing. So then, obviously, this is an area that doesn't have much going on, you know, especially in terms of arts and culture. So as soon as we started working, we got great crowds of people watching, and eventually they actually started helping after they figured out what was going on. Especially the little kids. We had a great team of kids helping every day. My other illusion shattered by Bogota, because I'd packed my suitcase full of Hawaiian shirts and shorts. It's freezing. Because of the altitude, it's so high up, it's just cold. But not only is it cold, it's wet, it's grey, and then in the middle of the day the sun comes out, you get sunburnt, and then it goes back in again, and it's cold again for the rest of the day. So, you know, I had to borrow someone's poncho to keep warm. So basically we just had to do it, get working. Got about halfway through when the local authority decided to cut the water off to the whole barrio, and nobody had any water luckily they gave us a couple of hours warning, so we quickly ran back to our little shanty house and filled up all the buckets we could, but we had to save those for drinking and cooking. But from that point on, none of us had a shower. We were like, you know, there's like 10 guys in this room, no showers, and we were using river water to mix the cement because it was the only water we could get, which you wouldn't want to drink the river water. It didn't look very healthy. But yeah, so we carried on, and came up with this idea of having the sort of white do the colour all the way through the middle until we ran out of colour tiles, and then just have this white band along the top and bottom where the design carried on, but it was black and white. So it looked like it was done on paper but hadn't been coloured in. That was the theory, although some of the guys weren't having it. So they decided to do their own thing. That's the other thing about graffiti artists. They're not very good at collaborating. They come to do their bit, you know, and it's going to be, yeah, we're much better at collaborating, Mosaic people. So, yeah. At this point as well, I'm also having meetings with the Wunan indigenous people, or one of the displaced tribes from the Pacific coast, so right from the other side of Colombia, in the jungle there. And they really wanted their culture to be reflected. So I was doing designs, still doing designs to try and fit in parts of their Wunan culture into the thing. And a lot of the Wunan people came along to help fix the mosaic as well, which was good. The first night there was a bit alarming because I kept hearing like gunshots going off all over the place. And I'm thinking, God, this is even worse than I thought it was going to be, because they'd already told me, like, don't walk alone in the street, don't carry a phone, so I couldn't take any photos, don't carry a phone or anything. And I kept hearing these gunshots. And when I got up the next morning, I asked about gunshots. It wasn't. They got, just to keep the violence, the atmosphere of violence, even though it wasn't, they got this game they play called Techo, where they set up this target of kind of explosives, and they throw balls at it, and the one who makes it explodes wins. So, and it's like the most popular game in the whole barrio. So as soon as it gets dark, you just hear these bang, bang, all coming from different techo bars where they play this game. Great fun. Although there was blood all over the pavement one morning. So yeah, like I say, we've got, this is part of the Wunan section where we designed sort of looking at their basket beadwork. There's one of the guys working on it. And the kids, all cute kids everywhere. And yeah, very, very, like, you couldn't put them off. They were there first thing in the morning. I don't think any of them seemed to go to school. They were just there all day, working. But God knows what their parents thought when they came home covered in cement and grout. So this is the sort of Wunan section being done. Back to the view of the barrio. But the thing I really liked about working with the graffiti guys is that the kind of designs they come up with were so imaginative, and because of the way they're used to working, and almost back to the thing that was being said earlier about practice. You know, not enough people are making mosaics all the time to get good at installation anymore. These guys, they're like out painting every day or every night, and they're painting whole murals overnight. And because they've got that turnover and they're doing so much, it's kind of forcing them to be more and more creative every time. And it's amazing imagery they come up with. But they're all kind of connected in one way or another to the idea of the community and bringing in the disparate communities from the various displaced people. So this is a kind of reference to the people building their own houses and how that can be made better, stuff like that. But you can see it's all a bit crazy. It's all crazy. Yeah, flamingos, which you don't get in Bogota, but you do get over in the Pacific side. That's the Wunan bit. Yeah, I'm looking at it now. It's like I think after the first week, the graffiti guys were all in a complete state of shock that it wasn't finished. So they had a little. We had a sort of a slight dip after the first week where they all sat around thinking, "Oh my God, this is going to take forever," which we were completely not used to. Luckily, the main guy organising it was very good at whipping them into shape and getting. And they're not naturally, because most of them are up all night graffitiing, so they're not very good at getting up in the morning and turning up for work regular and stuff like that. So they had to be sort of encouraged. I mean, the community guys were fine. They would come in every day and do their bit, but the actual graffiti artists needed a bit of encouragement after the first week. And then when they saw we were going to actually finish, they actually picked up and got a bit happier. And there's a section of the whole bit. This is all connected to corn being very symbolic to a lot of indigenous people in South America. And you get a bit more of an idea of the size of it. This is a new sort of football court that's being built, partly to give the local people some sort of cultural activity and stuff going on, but also partly just to stop the whole area being covered in houses, because every free piece of land is just being built on, with these sort of homemade sort of rickety houses everywhere. So it was keeping a space as a public space rather than it all being consumed by more and more houses. And this is kind of the whole scheme from beginning. Yeah, it's about 2 meters high, and about sort of 45, 50 meters long, which we did in 3 weeks. It's crazy, hard work. So now I'll show the little video, which is mostly in Spanish. So that's a good test for your Spanish speakers, but it gives you a much better idea of the feel, I think, for the whole project. So we'll put that on now.
Mi nombre es Carlos Gil, les presento también mis manos, que van a ser parte de un proyecto del cual quiero hablarles. Se trata de las manos de todos, y se trata de una acción estética colectiva con un grupo muy diverso de personas.
Las Manos de Todos es un proyecto de aprendizaje colectivo. Básicamente es un proyecto innovador, es un proyecto único, es un proyecto pretencioso sobre todo, ya que sin conocer temas de la técnica y pues procesos de cómo se hacía el mosaico, logramos sacar una obra artística muy importante.
So my name's Gary Drostle. I'm from London. I'm a specialist in public mosaic art. My expectations of this project before I left London were, well, I knew it would be a project in Ciudad Bolivar, and I knew of the reputation and the work of Ink Crew, so I had an idea of what I thought that was the reality of the project, and it sounded exciting and something that I would like to be involved in. When I got here and realized that it was 92 square meters, I thought it was completely impossible straight away.
Fue un proyecto, pues un reto personal bastante grande, ya que digamos en mi cuestión personal pues fue alejarse bastante de mi zona de confort artística, que digamos que es el graffiti. Entonces fue como llegar a un punto en el cual no sabía cuál era la técnica, cómo era el proceso de inicio, de final, qué nos íbamos a encontrar en el camino, y fue un proceso bastante enriquecedor, ya que pues la experiencia tanto en la parte de producción, la parte logística, la parte artística, siempre estuvo como bastante fuerte.
Me siento un poco pues contento, digamos, con esta presentación acá. Es algo fructífero, digamos, para el pueblo y para la comunidad que están asentados aquí en la localidad de Ciudad Bolívar. y eso me hace sentir, digamos, orgulloso de presentar cada día, cada vez en este espacio, digamos, en este escenario, y eso me siente algo muy contento, digamos.
I think there's a really good relationship or conversation to have between Mosaic and other street arts, graffiti, and there's a lot of inspiration there and a lot of crossover that both maybe sort of graffiti can help, not help, but it can develop graffiti in different ways, but it can also affect Mosaic and change how Mosaic is. So for me, that is a really important thing, working with Ink Crew and the exchange of ideas and different ways of approaching a wall and how to interpret and make a mural happen, you know, in the community. So that is a big thing, but also obviously working in a place like Paraíso, for me it's a great opportunity to bring, anchor what I do back in real life. I find there's always a danger that as like my reputation in the UK gets bigger, I get drawn more and more into a kind of elite little corner of wealthy patrons or people who, you know, want a nice mosaic in their house, and that's really not what I want to do, and that's not where I started out. I started out painting murals in my community and on the street because I wanted to get away from the gallery system, to be on the street and talking to ordinary people. So this is, for me, coming here is a big pullback to where it started. Yeah, it's good. There we go. Thanks.